It's my freshman year, and I'm sharing a cramped dorm room with my best friend, Lisa. We've been inseparable since day one of college. And we thought we could conquer anything together. But we were wrong. One night, Lisa decided it was time to hit the books hard, prepping for those dreaded midterm exams. Meanwhile, I had a hot date lined up and an epic college party calling my name. So, Lisa, ever the diligent student, nods and says, "I've got this, Sarah. You go enjoy yourself." And enjoy myself I did. The party was a whirlwind of music, laughter, and flashing lights. As the hours ticked by, guilt gnawed at me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I should be back in our dorm room with Lisa. So, with the party's euphoria slowly fading, I headed back to our room. It was pitch black, and Lisa was asleep with her reading lamp still on. Not wanting to wake her, I tiptoed in and slipped into bed without flicking on the lights. Morning came, and I was eager to talk exams with Lisa. But something was terribly wrong. She didn't respond to me at all. Not even a hint of movement. Panic clawed its way into my chest. I leaned in closer, my heart pounding, and pulled back the covers. What I saw still haunts my nightmares to this day. Lisa's face, once full of life, now bore the ghastly marks of a brutal attack, with deep bruises marring her skin. I tried to scream, but terror had stolen my voice. As I stumbled backward, I knocked over Lisa's study table, sending books and papers flying. The room was in chaos, but that wasn't the worst part. On the wall, written in red, were words that made my blood run cold. And I couldn't shake the feeling that we were not alone in that room. The authorities were called in, but the mystery only deepened. Lisa ended up in the hospital, unconscious and battered, her face a horrifying testament to the horrors of that night. Our once comforting dorm room had become a living nightmare, and I couldn't escape the feeling that an evil presence still lurked within those walls. When I was around 13 or 14, my parents began entrusting me and my sisters with the responsibility of being home alone. They laid down some ground rules, simple yet crucial: never reveal that we were home alone and, under no circumstances, allow anyone into the house. One night, a knock echoed through the stillness of our home. I approached the door, cautiously peering through the blinds, attempting to identify our visitor. The glow of the lights and the flicker of the TV made it impossible to pretend we weren't home. I hesitantly cracked open the front door, hoping to find the person standing behind the protective barrier of our screen door. To my surprise, there was a man, somewhere in his late 20s or early 30s, standing right in the doorway. I swiftly shut the door and instructed him to step behind the screen door, a rash decision on my part. With the screen door safely latched, he began telling a story about his vehicle breaking down and his desperate need for a phone. I pointed out I couldn't see any car nearby. He claimed it was further down the road. I couldn't help but question why he didn't go to the two nearby houses, both had cars in their driveways. My suspicions grew. As the night wore on, the tension in the air grew thicker. He insists on using our phone. I explained that my dad was asleep, but he showed no signs of backing down. In fact, he began insisting that my dad come out. I hurriedly closed and locked the door. As my sisters and I huddled together, discussing how frightening the encounter had been, we suddenly heard the side door handle rattling. He knocked and called out, "Will the phone cord reach this door?" In that moment, I firmly instructed him to go to the neighbor's house and use their phone. However, his frustration boiled over, and he shouted, "I bet your dad isn't even here. Let me inside. I need to talk to him." I returned to the door, racked the shotgun from my dad's room here. "Meet my dad." The man's demeanor shifted dramatically, his anger giving way to fear. The man began hurling curses and insults my way. But eventually, he seemed to depart. Or so I believed at first. In reality, he had circled around to another door, attempting his luck there. Our dog, who had been outside all this while, started barking loudly at him. What happened next was nothing short of horrifying. He did something that caused the dog to yelp and cry out in pain. It sent shivers down my spine. I yelled at the top of my lungs that I was dialing the police, and finally, he relented and disappeared into the night. After that creepy encounter, I couldn't help but feel incredibly dumb about the whole thing. Was he just some guy who needed a phone, or was there something more to it? It was a seriously unsettling experience, and honestly, I had no clue how to deal with it. House sitting for a new neighbor was not exactly how I had planned to spend my evening as a 6th grader. She was a single mom who had recently moved to Indianapolis from the East Coast. Her plea for a babysitter had reached my ears, and I agreed to help out. All I had to do was sit in the house and tackle my math homework while she was out on a date. Seemed like an easy gig, or so I thought. Her 2-year-old baby was peacefully sleeping in his crib, tucked away in his cozy room. The house was quiet, and I began to work on my math problems, hoping to finish them before she returned. Around 9 p.m., just as I was getting into the rhythm of equations and fractions, the phone rang. I answered it, unsure of who could be calling at this hour. A deep voice on the other end simply asked, "Who are you?" I replied hesitantly, "I'm the babysitter." The man on the line continued with a barrage of questions, his tone growing increasingly sinister. He wanted to know where the mom was, and he began to ask about my personal life. My heart began to race, and fear crept in as I realized something was seriously wrong. Panicking, I hung up the phone and immediately dialed the mom's number to inform her about the unsettling call. Before I could even explain, the phone rang again, displaying the same unknown number. I hesitated but answered it, hoping to get some answers or assistance. This time, the voice on the other end starts saying the address I am currently at. My blood ran cold. How did this person know where I was? I got myself together and said, "Yes, the baby is fine." The mysterious caller, still in that chilling, calm tone, said, "How can you be so sure when he's that close to a window?" My heart raced as I realized the baby's room had a window nearby. Panic set in, and I blurted out, "I'm just the babysitter and am trying really hard on my math homework. And now I'm scared. And I'm also failing math. Fuck you." Tears welled up in my eyes as a full-blown mental breakdown happened right there on the phone. 5 minutes later, the mom's car pulled up in the driveway. She rushed inside, sensing the urgency in my voice. I handed her the phone, unable to speak. She took the call and, to my relief, began speaking sternly. It turned out that the mysterious caller was her ex-husband, who had somehow managed to track her down. She had thought she had escaped him when she moved to Indianapolis, but he had found her once again. The fear that had gripped me was all too real. The mom thanked me for my quick thinking and handed me a wad of cash, apologizing for what happened. I left the house, still shaken by the experience, but at least knowing that the baby and his mom were safe for the time being. To this day, I have no idea if the guy had been lurking in the bushes outside the house or if he was calling from miles away in Massachusetts. All I know is that it was a night I would never forget, a night when the simple task of babysitting turned into a chilling encounter with the unknown. I was just 14 years old, and it felt like an ordinary night. Around 9 p.m. I was at my little cousin's house, babysitting for the evening while my mom and aunt were out shopping, and my dad and uncle were at the movie theater. My cousin and I were settled in, watching TV, but something didn't feel right. It was a strange, unsettling feeling that hung in the air. I couldn't figure out what was wrong, so I tried to brush it off and continued watching TV with my cousin. But the feeling wasn't going away, so I decided to get up and check the back door. As I made my way through the kitchen, my heart skipped a beat. There, outside the window, was a man who looked like he had been through hell and back, a homeless and decrepit figure. He was staring right into the window, fixating on my cousin. Instantly, my protective instincts kicked in. I didn't want to alarm my cousin, so I acted as if I hadn't noticed the man. Instead, I calmly told my little cousin that it was time for us to go upstairs because our parents would be back soon, and they wouldn't want him staying up late this. I hurried upstairs and put him to bed, fully aware that there was a man outside who had sinister intentions. At the time, I weighed around 125 pounds and stood at 5 feet 8 inches, and I played football for my school. I rushed back downstairs, my adrenaline pumping, and grabbed one of those meat tenderizing hammers from the kitchen. I returned to the window where I had seen the man. He was no longer there. Panicked, I raced to the front door, checking to ensure it was locked both with the deadbolt and the knob. It was secure. I then sprinted back upstairs, clutching the meat tenderizer, and entered my cousin's room. I positioned myself in front of the door, trying to reassure him that everything would be okay. I told him not to worry and to keep his head low. I dialed 911 and then phoned my dad and uncle, who were 45 minutes away. The police would take at least half an hour to arrive. In the eerie silence, we suddenly heard the sound of a window shattering downstairs, followed by heavy footsteps stomping around on the main floor. My heart raced as fear washed over me. I whispered to my cousin to stay calm, hide under the covers, and remain absolutely silent. I strained to listen as the intruder moved about downstairs. A terrifying and uncertain presence in the house. I clutched the meat tenderizer tightly, my knuckles turning white, and waited for whatever would happen next. About 5 agonizing minutes later, I heard the sound of boots slowly ascending the stairs. At this point, my heart felt like it was about to burst out of my chest. My cousin's room was no more than 10 feet from the stairs, and I couldn't imagine what might happen if the intruder reached us. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the police arrived and stormed into the house. It turned out that the man outside was an escaped patient from a mental hospital in another state. In that terrifying night, I had come face to face with the unimaginable, and there was just a wooden door and 10 feet between us.